right. So let's see what we've got in here. Okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie. Cool. So let's continue here. All right. So we have the main sort of thing done here. We have the main sort of. All right. Okie doke. Okie dokie. So we got the main thing done here. We just need to finish this one up. So continuing on down here, adopting for the future, ready to shape the future together. Yes. I guess now we just need to add a footer. So let me do that. All right, reserved 2025. Let's just do that. Let's make this wider. All right. Cool. So now that most of the site is done, all I need to do is review the spacing and everything, make sure it all makes sense. And also review the font sizing. We got class variable for 32 pixels here. We got 64 for the initial title. Is that well repeated? It's not. Okay, we have 64, 64. So we should continue that 64 throughout. All right, so that's sorted. So let's think about this. Proactively adapting to users' need in real time. Okay. Fair enough, fair enough. So let's see. I think a lot of this is good. I think we just need to look at updating the figures a bit. And yeah, I mean, fundamentally just update the spacing in here a bit. So let's think about what type of spacing we want. You know, obviously this is quite far spaced from the initial title. And I usually do this where I initially just kind of freehand a lot of things, but then, you know, once it's time to actually get ready and send this through to to wherever it needs to go, you kind of need to give it a second look as far as spacing and everything. Okay, so I think that's fair. I think that's good. Let me just walk through everything here, make sure everything is correctly spaced. 144, I think that's fine. Is the spacing of everything here in the top section the best it could be? I don't think so. I think we need to perhaps extend this a little bit so have the subheadline stand out a bit more. Okay, I think that's fair, yeah. So moving on to the spacing here, I think that's also quite fine. All right, what about here? Yeah, I think this is a section I kind of auto layouted already quite decently. This section obviously auto layouted, so we got 20 pixels there. Just want to make sure that that's reflected in all of the other sections. We got 20 there. Okay, yeah, so that's pretty solidly spaced already. So we have this section where the future is full of possibilities at company name. Oh yeah, that's what I forgot. So I also need to reflect the sort of blurb and blob language, the visual language of the site a bit better. So, okay, so here we have the, right blob into the left blob into the right blob. So we probably want to figure out some type of more consistent pattern for this. Let me see where we have that. So I'm going back to my visual assets, seeing where all these live. Okay. 3D objects, yep. This is what we're looking for. Okay, so it's loading a bit slowly here. I'm looking for these liquid ones though. Okay, so I'm just gonna wait for that to load up a bit. But the point is we want to really create some more consistent pattern. And I think the best way to do that probably is to go with a 3. So, 1, 2, 3, and then repeat that. I think that probably makes the most sense. I think this top section is completely fine as is. Second section, okay. I think we need to repeat this one here instead though. Yeah, something like that. Okay, yeah, so that seems a bit more consistent there. I suppose you would wonder whether you would need to, I suppose you would ask whether you would need to have this near to the title like that. I think that's probably better. Okay, so I think that's a fine start there. So, okay. Question now is whether we want to enlarge this for the section that's a bit more vibrant. I think we might. So here we obviously have some smaller kind of blurbs, but I think now we want to enlarge these blurbs here a bit further down. So I'm going to just adjust the sizings of these a little bit. I think, yeah, we probably want to make these a bit bigger here. Yeah. Okay, so we have all the visual assets here pasted in. Although I will say that it does feel a bit more cluttered this way. So I think maybe we actually don't get these too much bigger. The issue is, how do you continue this pattern without making things too cluttered? Maybe we actually need to think about a different layout for this section. So you have this, obviously the center text, but then you kind of need to follow that with yeah, you have the center text there. And I guess now we just need to think about what to do next here. it may make sense to only have these blurbs close to the actual callouts or whatever here. So you could do something like this to achieve that. Okay. And that's fair enough, I think. Perhaps it's something you should just use sparingly, these things. Okay. I'm actually not a fan looking at it now because it kind of highlights how off they are color-wise from each other, which kind of is the opposite of what you want here. So it may only make sense to keep this sort of at the top level, and then going into the second section, and they can then sort of act as section separators in a way, which I think makes sense. Okay. We want to make sure we look at this one. All right. I think it actually makes more sense to keep this at the top, kind of keeping this kind of one unit a little bit, something like that. Yeah, so in a way, they can sort of act as section separators in a way. I think that's fine because you kind of have to define what how your visual language will be acting, and I think this might be a fine solution for that. I'm gonna just put this here in the front. I actually can't do that, so let's kind of crop this out if we can. This a little bit. And, you know, you could maybe alternate these, have these alternate here for the bottom, something like that. I wonder if that's too simplistic though. So as I scroll through this, we obviously have the visual language of these things on the side. Does that get too boring and repetitive though, is the question. Yeah, so you have these. I think the thing I need to consider is that there's a lot more potential in this section. Currently it's just sort of text. Does that make sense? I suppose what I don't want is for this to appear overly basic, I guess. Because right now, if you just kind of have these top down, it's gets a bit old, a bit boring. So maybe you can do something where you offset the size here a little bit to give it some rhythm. So I can increase the size of this one. Just make this feel a bit more present. Then maybe reduce the size of this one. Then they can sort of alternate on the way down. going from sort of larger to smaller there. Maybe that would work a bit better. Got this and then large left side, bigger right side. Probably want to increase that, just make that barely visible, and then here on the right hand side make this far more visible. I'll reduce the size of that a bit maybe. Yeah. It probably is a little less boring that way. You can sort of crop this out a little bit, give this some more presence, and then point that down to the content. So you have this. And then obviously down here, you want to continue that. So let's do this, make this a bit smaller, make this a bit bigger. I think we want to probably alternate these, just make a pattern of 2, and then just kind of keep that pattern going. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just forget the possible redesign of this section and just gonna keep it very simple. Maybe just add the company CEO there or something. Add the company CEO, just add a quick splash of color in there. Yeah, I think that makes enough sense. And then you can kind of mirror this again down there. Okay, I think that's probably okay. The only issue, I guess, is at the moment this section feels quite empty. So I need to figure out a way to have this section more properly resonate without having it feel too empty. So let's see how we can do that. So we have medium in there. I think we probably want to make that a bit more consistent across the board. We don't want random medium sizes and semi-bold sizes, so I'm just going to update that. Yeah, so you have the medium and you have the semi-bold. For the subheaders, what should we use? Is there any precedent for that earlier? I think not really. You do have the semi-bold and you do have the medium. Whatever the case, I think we probably should reduce the size of these a little bit. Something like that. And I think that works a bit better. I guess the only issue at the moment then is that this section just feels kind of boring, because it's just so straightforward and the spacing doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think the issue with that is that the actual graphics are very tall, whereas the text isn't necessarily so. So I think I need to make the graphics probably a bit wider to kind of talk a bit differently to the text. So let's try that. Let's make these a bit wider here. See if the grid agrees with that. Something like that. And then here, extend this a little further here as well to roughly that grid point. Though we do want to keep the same dimensions of these here a little bit. So which is better? I think the new version is probably way better, actually, looking at it. So, so that seems solved now. Going down here, okay, yeah, this does look a bit better here. Okay, so we just need to work on the visual effects or the hover effects here now. So we need to have a mouse. Pointer. Make that an absolute element. Add some spacing to it. Background color to it as well. Let's make this a 25. Make this a bit bigger. Let's go with like 32. Rotate that a bit. So let's think about this hover effect. So what should this hover effect be? I think that it makes sense for this hover effect to be a bit of a longer description, probably. Black makes sense. So let's think about the spacing between these now. 32 pixels, 24. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It probably does not need to extend fully. I think can probably add some spacing there below. All right, I think that's a bit better. Now we just need to find the mouse again. Let's just make that a bit more clear. Let's make this a 36. Okay. Yeah, I'm so tired of looking at this site. I've been kind of wrestling with this one for quite a while. very eager to just get this site done and over with, honestly. Okay, semi-bold 16, semi-bold 16 is what we should do. Let's keep that pattern. Semi-bold 16. With the updated color. Let's look at what spacing we have. So here we have 16. Here we have 12. You know, we should make that more consistent. So 16 there. 16. Then continue that down here. 16. 16. All right. I'm going to keep the all caps going as well. Sustainable growth, all that. Semi-bold, semi-bold. Okay, so that's better. Getting a bit more consistent throughout the board now. Okay. Yeah, okay, nice. So I think now we just need to look at this section. Shape the future together. We need to look at some updated spacing for that. All right. I guess the one thing that's not quite working for me is the icons. They're too big, first of all. Second of all, they don't really feel like they are that great. For some reason, this is not quite hitting the way I would like it to. Maybe we can make these white. Yeah, making these white I think is fine. I think that's probably the way to go. This is a bit better. $56, $40. Yeah, so this is another thing we need to look at. How large should the subheads be? And I think 40 is like what we want to kind of do across the board. The only issue with that is that the scale of these now seem a bit ridiculous. And maybe for that reason, we should probably reconsider the alignment here. We could probably even go like this. Make these a bit smaller. So let's say 480. The only negative thing about having these be a bit smaller is that I think it could make it a bit more monotonous, the whole site, which we obviously don't want, but I have a choice here. Okay. Let's see. Looks like we have some text cut off here. Why is that? Okay. Somehow this actually looks quite a bit cleaner. This is so frustrating. So I'm not okay. So top section, I think is fair enough. Following section, I think is fine. And then the actual proposals, I think is fine. But then here's where we kind of run into issues. It's just the shape of these doesn't really make sense. So I think these probably, I think the heading size doesn't really work here. I think we probably need to make the heading size a bit larger still, as well as for these sections down here. No, never mind, never mind. Okay. Okay, we can not do that. God, that looked weird. Here we should probably cut these a bit, something like that. This section is fine, this section's fine. This is the issue though. This is the issue. So these have a fixed height. Need to fix that. Two, 64. Yeah, something like that. Maybe I can actually fill this content out a little bit. If we add some bullet points, maybe that'll solve it. Material symbol slides. What are they called? Sparkle, star. What sort of icon can we use for this? Let's think about that one. Okay, Victor. Okay, I think that's it. I think I'm gonna call it there. I'll continue this site in a little bit, but yeah, if you've been watching, thanks for watching.